In this video, we will show you how to replace your vehicle's inner tie rod end on this Nissan Maxima. This is part of your front steering and suspension located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Once you've completed that, we're going to remove all 5 of our 21mm lug nuts and we can get the wheel off of here. Now with the wheel out of the way, we have a clear view of our outer tie rod end, our jam nut, inner tie rod end, and our bellows boot. In this area, we're going to start by dislodging our jam nut from this area using a 22mm. When turning this, we're going to turn it clockwise, pulling the jam nut away from the outer tie rod end. Once you have that broken free, let's follow that outer tie rod end all the way to the outer mounting point. In this area, you're going to typically find that you have a locking cotter pin you have to remove and eventually replace during the installation process. For this, I'm just using some cutters. We'll try working this out of position. Just have to move it around a little bit here, see if we can get it to break free. It's common for these to break off. We'll set that aside for recycling. We'll be using a 19mm to remove this mounting nut. A quick inspection, start it back on a couple threads. Now we're going to cause some vibration in this area to break the tie rod end free from the steering knuckle. Continuing from here, we're going to unscrew the outer tie rod end from the inner tie rod end. While doing so, count the amount of turns it takes to remove it. 1, 2, and so on. I got 16, your number may vary. There it is, friend. A quick inspection, set it aside. With the outer tie rod end out of the way, we're going to continue on to holding on to the shaft of the inner tie rod end so we can fully remove the jam nut from that inner tie rod end. For this, there's an area that you can typically grab onto with a wrench, but I find that wrenches slip, so I'm just going to use some locking pliers. Now with the jam nut out of the way, the next thing we'll do is focus on removing the bellows boot from the inner tie rod end. On the outboard side, you can see that there's a small squeezable clamp. I'm going to be using some long nose pliers for this. Go ahead and squeeze on those 3 ears. We're drawing them together and we can remove that clamp. A quick inspection will set that clamp aside. Now we're going to separate the bellows boot from the inner tie rod end. I'm just using an angled pick for this. We're being careful not to cause any damage. We just want to break it free. There we are. Work our way around. Now, if you are following this bellows boot all the way towards your power steering rack, you're going to find that there's another clamp. This one's a little bit further in here, and it's fairly hard to get to, but it can easily be done using a pry bar and a hammer to break it free. We're going to rest right up against the edge of that clamp right there, being extremely careful for the power steering rack and the bellows boot, and we'll tap on this to break it free here. Now that we have that clamp separated, we can take hold of the boot. We're going to start twisting it to pull it out and away. Typically, it will be attached to your power steering rack and the inner tie rod end. You can see it pulling away here. A quick inspection, make sure it's soft and pliable. We'll set it aside. And there it is, friend. Now with that out of the way, we can see our inner tie rod end and where it connects onto the power steering rack. We're going to start turning this area counterclockwise to unscrew it and remove it. There's several different types of inner tie rod end tools you can use. I'm using one that looks like this. I'm going to go around that, we'll tighten this, and then we can turn it counterclockwise. Now we can take hold of that inner tie rod end. We're going to start unscrewing it from the power steering rack. This one's a little tight on here, must have some thread locker. Typically they unscrew fairly easily. There it is, friend. With that out of place, let's continue on to cleaning up the mounting area. We'll start at the very end of the power steering rack here. Quick inspection. Just want to double check, make sure nothing's rotted, weak, or damaged in this area. Let's continue following it in towards that power steering rack. In this area, we're just wiping around the base of the power steering rack, confirming that there's no miscellaneous debris or damage. Go all the way around there. That looks good. Okay, let's prepare to install our brand new inner tie rod end. During the removal process of the original inner tie rod end, it had this small plastic spacer. The spacer itself has 2 tabs. Those tabs will go into the slots on the power steering rack. Let's get this in place. We'll start it in by hand so we're sure we are not cross-threading it into the wrong position. Once this does start going in, we'll make sure that we twist that spacer until it's properly aligned with the rack, and then we can continue on with our installation. We'll just be careful for any pinch points. Right there is bottomed out. Let's continue on with the inner tie rod end tool. Now we're going to get this in place. We're going to be turning this clockwise to snug it. Okay, right there is bottomed out. We're only going to take this a little bit further. We don't want to cause any damage to the power steering rack, but you do need to make sure this is secured. There we are. We're sure it's tight. Let's remove our inner tie rod end tool. Continuing on in your kit, you're going to find a cane with a packet of high temperature lubricant. We're going to add some inside this ball and socket area and work it around. Use a glove finger to spread it as necessary. We'll save a little bit of that lubricant. Continue on along this area of the inner tie rod end. You can see that there's a groove that makes its way all the way around. We're going to be using some lubricant in this area. That's where the bellows boot will sit. This will help the alignment professional in the end. Now we can install our power steering rack bellow boot. We'll take this and start sliding it onto the inner tie rod end all the way in till it aligns with our power steering rack. As far as the inboard clamp, you can use a wire tie for this. We'll just have it already in a pre-made circle here. We don't have to have it tight yet. We will tighten it once it is on the power steering rack. Let's start sliding this over the inner tie rod end. It's going to make its way all the way down over there. If need be, you can turn the wheel from one side or the other. Just be extremely careful not to shift your vehicle off of your jack or jack stands, depending on how you have it. Now this part can be a little bit difficult getting the bellow boot attached to the power steering rack. Once it is, we're going to continue on by tightening it in place with our wire tie or clamp. All right, it's over the power steering rack. Let's tighten this and trim off any excess. A light tug on that boot. We don't want to tear it. You do want to make sure it's properly secured. Let's continue on to the outboard clamp. Now for this, I'm just going to use a wire tie. You can reuse your original clamp if necessary, assuming that's still in good condition. There we go. Continuing on, let's apply some anti-seize to the threaded portion here. Go right up where that jam nut's going to sit. Get the jam nut on here. Before we install our outer tie rod end, let's apply some anti-seize to this threaded area of the inner tie rod end. Now it's time to install the outer tie rod end. We're going to start this on by hand. We'll continue on turning it in the same amount of turns it took to remove it. Just gonna get this aligned. There we are. 1, 2, and so on. Now we can install the outer tie rod end to our steering knuckle. Get that in position. With that slid into position, we'll continue on with our washer up along the tie rod stud. We're pressing that all the way up against the steering knuckle. Continue on with a brand new tie rod end nut. We'll start it on, snug it up. The torque for this is 25 foot-pounds. If you're reusing your original tie rod end nut, make sure you reinstall your locking cotter pin. Now we're making our way back to that center jam nut. Turn this counterclockwise until it's bottomed out against your outer tie rod end. Now we're going to hold the outer tie rod end with a 21mm right along this area, and we'll use our 22mm for our jam nut, continuing to turn it counterclockwise until it's completely locked in. Okay, right there's bottomed out. We'll just take it a tiny bit further. One last quick inspection in this area, we can reinstall our wheel. Once you've started on all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts, we're going to bottom these out in a crisscross manner. We'll get the wheel back on the ground and torque each of the lug nuts to 83 foot-pounds. Now we've got the wheel safely back on the ground, let's go ahead and torque these in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Okay friend, we finished our installation. The next thing that you need to do is go ahead and take your vehicle for a road test down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.